Welcome to Kanerika's podcast, The Digital Shift. Let us start today with a paradox that perfectly defines the enterprise landscape right now.
Oh, it really does.
Currently, an incredible 71% of organizations are using generative AI in at least one business function.
Which is just a massive number.
It is staggering. And, if you just looked at the headlines, you would assume we are coasting into a golden age of frictionless automation.
Yeah, you would think the hard part is over.
Right. But here is the reality check. A massive 95% of those generative AI deployments see absolutely zero measurable return on investment.
It is a rather sobering contrast, honestly. I mean, on paper, adoption is completely ubiquitous. You can buy a license and spin up a model in an afternoon.
Exactly.
But dependable, governed production that actually moves the needle for a business, that is incredibly rare.
It really is. So our mission for you today is to uncover why so many of these ambitious AI projects fall into what we call the production gap.
Right, the graveyard of pilots. Yeah, exactly. We are going to explore the proven, real-world strategies that actually work to turn stalled, expensive pilots into impactful production-grade AI, things that drive tangible business value.
Because the current failure rate is just not sustainable.
No, it's not. Okay, let's unpack this. With literally everyone rushing to adopt artificial intelligence, why are 30% of projects completely abandoned after the initial proof of concept phase? I mean, is the technology itself just overhyped, or are businesses fundamentally misunderstanding how to implement it?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the bottleneck is almost never the AI model itself.
Really?
Yeah, the technology works, the underlying neural networks are brilliant. The failure point, the reason these projects get quietly shelved, is the data foundation underneath the AI.
Ah, the infrastructure.
Exactly. Think about the mechanics of it. If you feed fragmented, ungoverned data into a state-of-the-art AI model, you are not creating intelligence. You are simply scaling your existing data chaos, just at a much faster computational speed. Because if the data is siloed and contradictory, the AI is effectively blind in one eye. We are not failing at AI, we are failing at data infrastructure.
Precisely. And, the financial impact of ignoring that structural foundation is severe. Right now, poor data quality costs the average organization $12.9 million every single year.
Wow. $12.9 million.
Every single year. It operates like a hidden tax on the enterprise. Looking ahead to the end of 2026, projections show that 60% of all AI projects will be abandoned simply because organizations lack what we call AI-ready data.
That is a staggering failure rate. So what specifically makes data unready? Like, what are the mechanical culprits dragging these projects down?
It usually comes down to three structural flaws. First, fragmented data sources.
Okay.
Your sales data is locked in one software environment, your operational supply chain data is in another, and they literally do not share the same schema or language.
You just can't talk to each other.
Exactly. Second is missing data lineage.
Wait, let me stop you there. Missing lineage. That is like a detective finding a murder weapon but having absolutely no fingerprints or chain of custody, right?
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. If an AI model makes a critical business decision, but you have no audited, immutable trail of where it sourced the information to make that decision, the output is legally and operationally useless.
Because you can't prove why it made the choice.
Right, you cannot trust it. And that leads to the third culprit, which is governance that is only bolted on as an afterthought. Usually, this happens after a terrifying compliance scare, rather than security being built into the platform architecture from day one.
But hold on, let me push back on that premise a bit. Today's foundational models are incredibly advanced. I mean, they can read unstructured text, they can infer context from messy documents. Surely, with today's tech, the AI can just sort through all that fragmented, siloed data on its own and figure out the lineage.
It is a really tempting proposition, but relying on the model to organize your data is a dangerous liability trap. Oh, absolutely. AI without a governed data foundation creates immense legal and operational exposure for an enterprise. Currently, 63% of organizations entirely lack the robust data governance practices that artificial intelligence actually requires to operate safely.
That is a lot of vulnerability.
It is. If you unleash an AI to sort through messy, ungoverned data, it will inevitably expose personally identifiable information. It will make biased hiring or lending decisions based on outdated records, and it will violate regional compliance laws.
So it's basically a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Yes, building AI on top of messy data just guarantees you will spend the entire next year doing expensive, painful rework.
Which brings us to a crucial realization for you listening. How do organizations objectively know where their foundation currently stands?
Yeah.
Because I imagine every executive sitting in a boardroom thinks their proprietary data is much cleaner than it actually is.
Oh, they almost universally overestimate their readiness. It's a real problem. And this raises an important question about how we measure infrastructural maturity. We use a 5-stage data and AI maturity model to help organizations pinpoint exactly where their capabilities lie.
Right, let's walk through those.
Sure, stage 1 is ad hoc. This is the Wild West. You have siloed data, zero formalized governance, and any AI you experiment with produces scattered, highly inconsistent results.
Basically, individual employees using AI on their local machines with absolutely no oversight.
Correct. Total shadow IT. Then stage 2 is foundational. Here, basic data consolidation is finally underway. You have rudimentary quality controls in place and maybe a few early localized use cases running on clean data sets.
So they're at least organizing a little bit.
Right. Then we get to stage 3, which is integrated. This is a major milestone. This is where you have a modern cloud-based platform in place, architectures like Microsoft Fabric, Databricks, or Snowflake, and you are actively running reusable automated data pipelines.
And I am guessing a lot of enterprises pat themselves on the back and declare total victory once they reach stage 3.
They really do. And structurally, most enterprises today are currently stuck oscillating right between levels 2 and 3.
But that's not enough, is it?
No, it's not. The compounding business value, the actual transformative return on investment, doesn't fundamentally kick in until you reach the next 2 stages. Stage 4 is governed.
Meaning?
This means governance, lineage tracking, and role-based access are deeply embedded into the very architecture of the data platform. You are finally running AI safely in a live production environment.
Okay, and the final stage.
Stage 5 is AI native. This is the absolute pinnacle of the maturity model. You have governed AI agents running autonomously on enterprise data, executing complex workflows, and you are tracking strict business outcomes, not just compute output.
So here's where it gets really interesting. Because the gap between being stuck at level 3 and successfully graduating to levels 4 and 5 is exactly where the market winners in 2026 are being decided.
Yep.
Leaders operating out in those top tiers are outperforming the laggards by roughly 20% on overall efficiency and revenue growth. Being stuck at level 3, it is like buying a multi-million-dollar high-performance sports car, which is the AI model, but trying to drive it at top speed on an unpaved, pothole-filled dirt road, which represents the ungoverned data.
That is a great way to look at it.
It doesn't matter how fast the engine is, right? The lack of a standardized road is going to shatter the car's suspension.
That analogy hits the underlying mechanism perfectly. The organization's actually generating measurable return on investment from artificial intelligence. Well, they have done the painstakingly hard work of paving that structural road first. They fix the foundation, standardize the data layer, and only then do they accelerate the AI deployment.
And this isn't just a theoretical framework. Let's look at what is actually happening on the ground, because we aren't just relying on industry surveys and executive opinions here. We at Kanerika have meticulously tracked the actual delivery outcomes from 161 documented enterprise engagements between 2015 and 2026.
Real, verified metrics.
Exactly. We are analyzing the hard technical data of what physically happens when you rebuild these systems from the ground up.
And the findings from our delivery data are incredibly conclusive. When we at Kanerika go in and fix that data foundation first, prioritizing governance before trying to scale the AI, the operational results are just transformative.
The numbers are wild.
They are. Across 414 uniquely measured business metrics in those 161 enterprise engagements, the median outcome improvement was 47%.
I just want to let that sink in for a moment for the listener.
Mm-hmm.
A 47% median improvement across the board. That is not just a slight quarter-over-quarter optimization. That is a total operational reset for a business.
It fundamentally changes the trajectory of a company. And 30% of those engagements reached a 90% or higher improvement on their primary key performance indicators. Yes. That magnitude of return only happens when the data foundation is modernized first, when governance is embedded from day one rather than bolted on, and when strict outcome metrics are tracked from the very first agile sprint.
I think it is really revealing to look at the financial mechanics of these highly successful projects. Like, where does the budget actually go?
That's the real tell.
Right. So, according to our delivery data, 47% of the budget goes toward analytics and AI deployment. But a crucial 16% goes directly to migration, physically moving off fragile legacy systems onto modern data platforms. It is the essential prerequisite that makes everything else functional. The remainder of the budget goes toward automation and governance integration.
And that 16% allocated to migration is arguably the most important investment an enterprise can make. But traditionally, migrating massive legacy code bases takes upwards of 2 years.
2 years of just moving data.
Yeah, you are untangling decades of hard-coded business logic, undocumented workarounds, and fragile database structures. By the time a traditional migration finishes, the business has completely lost its AI momentum and its executive sponsorship.
Which is exactly why we utilize our migration platform, Flip. By deploying Flip, we compress those incredibly complex multi-year legacy code migrations into just 90 days.
It is a game changer.
It really is.
Yeah.
It mathematically cuts the overall engineering effort by 50 to 60%. Flip completely changes the enterprise risk profile on modernization. You aren't waiting 2 years and burning millions just to pave your dirt road. You're doing it in a single financial quarter, and then you are immediately ready to deploy governed AI.
Exactly. Because Flip accelerates that foundational phase so dramatically, our clients are able to reach those stage 4 and stage 5 AI maturity levels while their market competitors are still arguing in committee meetings over how to extract simple reports from an old on-premise server.
So true. So let's make the mechanics of this tangible for you listening. What does this foundation-first approach physically look like in practice across different sectors? Because a 90% improvement means fundamentally different things depending on how your industry actually operates.
Definitely. The structural blockers are different, and so are the technical victories. Let's start with banking and financial services. In that sector, you have massive legacy core systems and incredibly strict federal regulations. Governed data isn't a nice-to-have luxury. It is a baseline legal requirement.
Right. You can't mess around with financial data.
No. In our engagements, implementing role-based compliance on a modern data foundation means the AI model only sees the specific financial data that the requesting user is legally authorized to access.
That is crucial.
It is. That structural control yielded a 99% plus defect detection accuracy. That is AI running securely at an investment bank scale without ever violating privacy firewalls.
And then you pivot over to healthcare and life sciences, where the stakes around data privacy are literally life and death.
Exactly right. In healthcare, handling strict rules around patient-identifiable information makes rigorous governance absolutely mandatory. You cannot even pilot an AI model legally without it.
Right.
By securing the data foundation first, organizations achieve strict security certifications like SOC 2 and ISO 27701 right out of the gate.
Meaning they are proving to independent auditors that highly sensitive patient data cannot be leaked or, hallucinated by a rogue AI prompt.
Precisely. Having that foundational certification allows healthcare providers to safely deploy AI to generate much faster clinical insights, analyze patient histories, and accelerate trial data, all without the constant fear of failing a federal compliance audit.
It is about engineering speed through safety.
Yeah.
What about retail and fast-moving consumer goods? That is a sector completely defined by demand volatility and razor-thin margins.
For retail, the mechanical challenge is channel complexity. When we unify their disparate data onto a single foundational platform, the AI isn't just looking at warehouse inventory in a vacuum.
It sees the whole picture.
Yes. It is simultaneously reading real-time point-of-sale transactions, supply chain delays, and even regional weather patterns.
Right.
We have seen this unified approach lead to a 90% forecast accuracy.
Wow.
You can optimize inventory routing and dynamic pricing because the AI is finally calculating based on a single, comprehensive source of truth.
And similarly, in manufacturing and logistics, organizations are constantly dealing with disconnected ERP systems holding up the physical supply chain.
Yes. The enterprise resource planning systems, the central nervous systems tracking every physical part, order, and invoice. When you have 3 different ERPs from historical mergers that don't talk to each other, you have massive blind spots.
Right.
When we connect those systems into a unified data fabric and apply predictive AI, we document 85% plus predictive accuracy regarding machine maintenance and supply shortages. That directly results in 78% faster operational outcomes right on the factory floor.
Okay, so what does this all mean? If the underlying mechanisms are proven, and the results are this spectacular across every single vertical, why isn't every company just executing this playbook immediately?
That is the million-dollar operational question. And the answer lies in how easy it is to fall into very specific procedural traps during implementation.
The pitfall.
Exactly. We have identified 5 failure modes of enterprise AI. These are the specific recurring patterns that consistently sink funding and prevent companies from seeing these massive industry gains.
Let's explore how these traps actually trigger one another.
Yeah.
Because I imagine when a company rushes to buy the flashy new technology without doing the prep work, they immediately hit the first failure mode.
They absolutely do. Trap number one is the model first, data later approach. This is exactly what we were discussing earlier. Engineering teams build brilliant, sophisticated AI interfaces on top of fragmented, unverified data.
And the result?
They spend their entire second year doing painful manual rework to fix all the hallucinations and structural errors the AI is confidently generating.
Right. They bought the sports car before paving the road, and now they're paying for the repairs.
Yeah.
And I assume that when leadership realizes the AI is hallucinating on bad data, their knee-jerk reaction is to slap a giant padlock on the whole system to prevent a data breach, which leads right into the next failure mode.
You've hit the nail on the head. That panic leads directly to trap number two, which is governance as an afterthought. This is the practice of bolting on security and access controls only after you have a compliance scare or a data leak.
Which has to be a nightmare to fix.
Functionally, retroactive governance is incredibly expensive.
Right.
It breaks existing employee workflows because suddenly they are locked out of systems they use every single day, and it slows overall deployment to an absolute crawl. Governance must be embedded into the platform architecture from day one.
And if they lock down the system so severely, I imagine the AI just becomes a glorified, highly restricted search engine that IT refuses to hook up to the live production servers, which sounds a lot like trap number 3.
Yes, that is the perfect recipe for trap number 3, pilot purgatory.
Pilot purgatory.
This is when innovation teams build incredibly impressive AI demos that look fantastic on a projector in a boardroom, but they never actually cross the threshold into live production. They remain isolated, sterile experiments because the underlying data architecture simply cannot support the compute load or the security requirements at scale.
Okay, let's say they miraculously survive the first 3 traps and actually manage to deploy the system. Trap number 4 is adoption neglect. And honestly, I have to push back on this one. You note in the findings that the biggest risk to AI return on investment isn't technology failure, it is user adoption.
Right.
But isn't user adoption just a standard human resources or training issue? Like, if the IT team builds a genuinely good time-saving tool, shouldn't it just sell itself to the employees using it?
That is a very common assumption. But if we connect this to the broader psychological picture of how enterprises function, you will see why that assumption is a fatal flaw for so many AI programs.
Okay, explain it.
Treating the technical go-live date as the finish line is where most financial value leaks out of an organization. A tool absolutely does not sell itself if it disrupts a user's daily workflow without a clear explanation of how it benefits them personally.
Oh, I see.
Delivering these AI solutions via low-code platforms so that line-of-business users feel a sense of ownership, and running rigorous change management in parallel with the technical build, that is what bridges the gap. That is the mechanism that transforms a deployed tool into a heavily used tool.
Because if they don't use it, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. If the employees don't physically log in and use it, your ROI is mathematically zero, no matter how elegant the Python code is.
That reframes it perfectly. Building the architecture is only half the battle. Integrating it into human behavior and daily habits is the rest. Which naturally brings us to the 5th and final failure mode, which is how leadership tracks all of this. Measuring output over outcomes.
This is a classic management trap that just destroys AI momentum. Teams try to justify their massive AI budgets by counting the number of dashboards they've built, the number of machine learning models they've trained, or the number of executive demo sessions they've run.
Just busy work metrics.
Purely output. It means nothing to the bottom line. To succeed, you have to measure mechanical outcomes, exact reduction in time to value, specific dollar amounts in cost reduction, or verifiable drops in manufacturing defect rates. If you cannot tie the AI's function directly to a hard financial business metric, leadership will eventually, and rightfully, cut the funding.
It is a rigorous gauntlet to run. But understanding the mechanics behind these failures makes it incredibly actionable. Looking ahead, how are these failure modes and this foundation-first strategy going to shape the immediate future? Let's dive into our 5 technical predictions for enterprise AI as we head through 2026.
First, the production gap we've been unpacking will transition from being an IT concern to a strict board-level KPI. Corporate boards will stop asking generic questions like, are we using AI, and start aggressively demanding metrics on what is our exact time to production and what is our AI cost to serve per employee.
Because the honeymoon phase of just playing with the technology is over. Boards want to see the financial return. Second on the list, and this ties back to our maturity model, governed AI agents will move from being novelty pilots to absolute standards.
Yes, absolutely. We will see autonomous AI agents deeply integrated into day-to-day line of business workflows. But critically, they will only be permitted to execute actions because the underlying role-based governance we discussed is fully operational.
Third, migration accelerators are going to fundamentally alter how enterprises handle project planning. As we mentioned with tools like Flip, platforms are going to turn what used to be multi-year, high-risk legacy modernization projects into highly predictable, weeks-long sprints.
And that speed completely changes capital allocation. Fourth, data quality itself will become the ultimate operational gatekeeper for AI funding. Internal innovation teams will simply not get budget approval from the CFO to spin up new AI models unless they can mathematically prove they have the clean lineage and data quality to support it without creating liability.
And finally, the ultimate market winners in 2026 will be those organizations that rigorously measure strict business outcomes, completely ignoring vanity metrics. The companies that win won't be the ones with the most AI pilots. They will be the ones with the most profitable, governed AI pipelines.
It is going to be a fascinating, highly competitive year, and the dividing line between the market leaders and the laggards has never been starker. AI adoption is easy. Anyone can swipe a corporate card, buy a license, and run a pilot. But reliable, governed, production-grade AI is rare, and it requires a rock-solid data foundation.
It absolutely does.
We at Kanerika have spent over a decade proving this exact methodology in the field. We are uniquely positioned to help enterprises objectively assess their maturity, utilize platforms like Flip to rapidly modernize their legacy debt, and build that essential data infrastructure.
And before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to ponder as you look at your own organization's digital roadmap and data infrastructure. In a world where every single enterprise, including all of your direct competitors, has access to the exact same cutting-edge open-source AI models, the ultimate competitive advantage is no longer the intelligence of the algorithm.
No, it's not. The algorithm is commoditized.
Exactly. The true advantage is the trustworthiness, the structural integrity, and the uniqueness of your proprietary data. If your AI is mathematically only as smart as your data is clean, well, what is your data currently teaching your AI?
That is a brilliant mechanical question to evaluate your own readiness.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Digital Shift. We highly encourage you to start evaluating the structural reality of your own data foundation today. Until next time.